Today I want to take you on a tour of my kitchen garden. It is the middle of June and there is tons of beautiful stuff and delicious stuff growing right now this month. So today I'm going to walk you step by step through every single bed and show you what I planted and what's growing and what's ready to harvest today. So stay tuned and let's walk through the garden together. Hey there, my name is Nicole Burke and I am the founder and owner of Gardenery Incorporated. Garden plus ordinary equals gardenery. Do you get it? We're on a mission to make the garden an ordinary part of everybody's life once again. So whether you're a beginner gardener and you're just getting started, or you're an experienced gardener and you want to learn to start your own garden coach business, Gardenery is the place to be. So make sure you subscribe to the Gardenery channel, hit that little bell thing so that you get a notification every time we post a new video, and be on the lookout for tons of garden inspiration this season. All right, let's get started with our garden tour. Sound good? Let's go. All right, let's kick it off by looking through the first two beds. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I like to plant my beds symmetrical. That means that this bed is going to imitate the bed right next to it. That creates this nice, beautiful growth that looks almost like an ornamental landscape, except you can eat it. So as I walk you through what's on this bed, you can guarantee that the same is planted on the bed right next to it. All right, so let's get started here in the front of this bed. So you guys know I love growing Swiss chard. This was planted from seed and it's starting to take off. Now it's a little crowded here, but just give it a little bit of time. You guys stay tuned. In a few weeks, months, this little baby is going to be huge and is going to be such a beautiful first part that you see in the kitchen garden. I love using Swiss chard right at the front of a bed because it's so beautiful, right? All right, so next we have this giant purple mustard. It's not giant yet, but it is getting there. So I planted these from seed about 45 days ago. And as you can see, they're really starting to take off. I'm gonna need to come in here, do some harvesting to make room for everything else. But you can see these have all taken off pretty well. These are gonna be my large plants here in the center. Now to the side, I have endive. So not everybody loves endive, but I do, or at least I kind of do when I mix it in with my sweeter greens. And endive is just such a pretty lettuce, don't you guys think? I mean, look at that. You just can't get that from the grocery store. So this is part of my 6 months of garden salad challenge. I'm trying to eat every day, eat a bowl of salad from the garden. And so all this endive is gonna make my 6 months of garden salad challenge possible. So I've got a whole row of this going down the garden. And then I have these French breakfast radishes. Now, I went out of town and did not harvest these in time, but I'll show you what these lovely girls look like. So you can see French breakfast are one of my favorite radishes to grow. And I really let these go a little too far. So generally you want to harvest them when they're smaller. And the sign that it's too late is these are starting to flower here. So French breakfast radishes along the edge, they are a great plant to grow short term along the edge of your kitchen garden. All right, so that is the front part of this bed. We have chives here. These chives came back from last year. Chives will come back again and again. They're one of the easiest things to grow in the kitchen garden. And you can see I've already taken one big harvest from this plant. All right, now we're gonna come in a little bit deeper, and I have my strawberries. Now, I don't grow a ton of strawberries, but you can see the first sets of fruit are coming off these plants. I mostly grow these just for fun to keep my kids coming to the kitchen garden. I find that berries often attract like rabbits and pests, but when you do just a few of these on the edge of the bed, it's just a fun addition, and it gets my kids to come out here and check the garden, which I am always excited to happen. All right, then we have the trellis. So the trellis is for your vining plants. I'm doing a little bit of crowding here, admittedly. I'm totally breaking the rules, but this is what's happening. So we have sugar snap peas that are growing up the vine. You can see these are really starting to take off, and they're really at their most productive and beautiful stage right now. So I need to harvest these like pronto. So you really don't want to leave peas hanging on the vine too long, because then that slows down the production for the rest of the vine. So we've got peas coming, and at the same time, we've got tomatoes. So I'll be growing my tomato arch trellis. Video for that coming soon. So I'm going to be growing these tomatoes up and over the trellis this summer. But I kind of am in a time crunch, so I have both of them happening at the same time. The peas went in really early this spring, I guess like around mid-March, and the tomatoes did not go in until we were past the frost date, the last frost date. But you can see the tomatoes have kind of caught up with the peas and they're beating them now. So this is a super fun, super crowded area, but lots of exciting things happening. And then we have the back of the bed, which is really mostly a mirror of what happened in the front of the bed too. So we have chives here, more strawberries. I have a few bush peas. These I planted earlier in the spring as well. So more bush peas, and then I have more of my warm season plants coming. So I've got 3 pepper plants that will produce as the summer rolls on. Right now they're really just getting started. And then really just an imitation of what's in the front of the garden. So more purple mustards, endive, and radishes. And that is what is in my first 2 front beds in the kitchen garden. All right, we are now gonna move on to the next 2 beds in my kitchen garden. Now, if you can't tell, I am in some serious sunshine right now. In fact, we are starting the video process very early this morning and the sun is already way high in the sky and super bright. So if you're seeing tons of growth in the garden and you're like, wow, how'd she do that? Well, all this sunshine that's making me squint, that's how I'm doing that. Well, and a lot of other things. So let's look with all this sunlight and what's planted in these 2 beds. So if you've been following along, this is where I've been pulling most of my salad for the last month and a half, for all of May and all of June. So far, I am harvesting over a salad a day for myself and my husband from just these 2 beds. So this total is 30 square feet. So if you're ever thinking you need a huge garden to grow enough salad to eat a day, you don't have to have a large one. So this is really just 15 square feet. And honestly, I could eat a salad a day, more than a salad a day, from just this little bed here. So let's talk about what's planted here. As you can tell, most of this is kind of finishing up. It's warming up. We're hitting more of the warm season, and a lot of these lettuces are really more intended for the cool season. But believe it or not, even though these are starting to get close to flowering, the taste isn't compromised yet. So you can tell when the taste is going to change, because when you harvest a lettuce leaf, it's going to produce a milky substance. This one is starting just barely to produce a milky substance, but it hasn't yet. And so it's still good to eat. So let's talk about what's in here, okay? In the middle is abundant, or it's Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. This is from Baker Creek Seeds, and we planted this from seed at the very end of February. I grew this mostly undercover for about 2 months. What I mean by undercover was, you see these little, what are these called? Hoops. We use these hoops and we put frost cloth over these. Now I'm gonna admit, I did not attach the frost cloth as I should have. And so there were many days I came out and the frost cloth was in my neighbor's yard. So what I mean is mostly frost cloth is that most of the days it has frost cloth on it, but on the days that it blew off or didn't stay, then these plants actually had hard frost and even snow on top of them. I'm gonna strip the rest of my lettuce. Hold on 1 second. So, all that to say, we were able to start this from seed and we're getting tons of growth. I have probably harvested from these spinach plants, I don't know, 10 times at least. And I can still harvest more from them this week. So this is long-standing spinach. And then on either side, we planted Rocky Top lettuce mix. This is also from Baker Creek Seeds. If you've followed me at all, or you know about my course, Salad School, you know that Rocky Top is my all-time favorite lettuce mix. So here along the sides, we've had the Rocky Top mix growing. Now, if you have ever bought like a spring mix from the grocery store, Rocky Top lettuce mix basically imitates that, but it tastes so much better because you're harvesting it and eating it right away. I like to say that leaves don't belong on a truck. unless they're dead. So leaves just don't travel well. So if you're gonna grow anything in your kitchen garden, you've got to start growing leaves, herbs, and lettuces. And as you can see, it's just easy to do from seed. I probably put about, I don't know, $9 worth of seed in these 2 beds combined. And I've probably harvested at least $100 worth of salad from the 2 beds in the last 45 days. So totally worth it. All right, if you're seeing all these wildflowers and you're thinking, Nicole, what is this about? This doesn't have anything to do with lettuce. You're right. So these are an experiment that failed. So a lot of times people think that every single thing I plant in the garden, sorry, I still have lettuce in my mouth. A lot of people think that everything I grow in the garden is a success because I'm always bragging about all the stuff I'm harvesting. But the truth is, probably 50% of the stuff that I grow doesn't turn out the way I anticipated. And so the trick is just plant a lot, right? So then even if you fail 50% of the time, you still have a lot of success. So that's what happened to me in this bed. I've had tons of success with the spinach and the Rocky Top lettuce. But here I planted, it's called red meat radish. And these radishes grew up pretty quickly. They did really well, beautiful leaves. And then all of a sudden they started to flower. And I knew they had not formed the root yet, the root that you need for the red meat radish. Red meat radishes are these nice, huge, big radishes that are sweet, not peppery. They're awesome. But for some reason, these started to flower. So I just thought, well, I'll just do an experiment and let them go all the way. So you can see what's happening here. We have the flowering, and then these are the seed pods. Is that so cool? I had never really watched a radish go to seed before. So believe it or not, inside these little pods will be seeds. So once this dries out, I can open this up and get more seeds that I'm probably gonna fail with. But hey, it's a fun experiment, right? So let me just pull one up and I'll show you how it did not go well. Let's see. So really here at the base, I should have a full round radish. And instead, all I have is this short little stumpy thing. So pretty disappointing, right? But at least I got these beautiful flowers. I might get some seeds. And the fun thing is you can eat these flowers. So again, I don't know why I keep putting stuff in my mouth. You can put these on top of a salad. They're so beautiful. I just did it in a spinach salad yesterday. And a really cool part about doing this is food for bees and butterflies, which we need to feed our warm season plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, and zucchini. So if you have a fail with something like I did with the radishes, just go ahead and experiment with them and just call it, you know, learning rather than failing. That's the way I like to say it. So that's what's planted in these 2 beds. We have abundant, long-standing Bloomsdale spinach from Baker Creek Seeds, Rocky Top lettuce on the outside, and then I had planted red meat radishes on the both the borders. You can see, I don't know if you can come to this bed, but I already pulled all of the radishes. As soon as they all started to flower, I pulled them to give more room for my Rocky Top lettuce. So I have been harvesting tons of lettuces out of this bed. You can see a few more. I've really been digging in and really harvesting almost daily from this one little section. So that's what's planted in these 2 beds. Basically, essentially, tons and tons of salad. So yeah, let's move on to the next 2 beds. All right, in these beds, you can see things are just as wild as they are in the front, maybe even more so. So here in the front, I have calendula that is just about to bloom. These were planted about a month ago from a transplant. I have Swiss chard again, because you know I love Swiss chard in the front of a bed. I have nasturtium that's coming up from seed, chives that came back from last year. I have a weed. Weeds are okay, it's no big deal. Okay, I have a weed, and then I have this romaine. So I started this romaine indoors in March, in the middle of March, and then I transplanted these out in April. So I've been picking off of these romaine lettuces. These are supposed to start supplying my salad garden challenge after my middle 2 beds give out, which is happening pretty quickly. So I've got romaine all along the border here in this garden and on the other side as well. If you see all these crazy yellow flowers, this is actually from another green called broccoli rabe. I think that's what it is. It's like R-A-A-B or rab, something like that. Anyway, it's supposed to be like just a healthy salad green. I can show you what one of the leaves looks like. It's kind of like a substitute for kale. You can use it in salads, of course. I'm on my salad challenge. But we were away for like a week at the beginning of June, and it got very hot here, and these plants did not have enough water, and they all went to seed. They all bolted. So that's what's happening here with all these yellow leaves. The bees have been loving them, so I have kept them in, but I'll probably pull them out this week. But they are so beautiful, I think. Well, what they are doing is shading my other plants that need some more space. So in here I have 3 cabbages. These are my large plants that are here in the center of the bed. So these are cabbages that will grow. They're going to take quite a while. Cabbages are like a 3-month or more situation. So I'm hoping these will do well here in the center of the bed. I've also got some peppers tucked in, and my favorite dinosaur kale. So this is Toscano kale. This little plant here will grow to be about, I don't know, 3-4 feet tall. It's crazy big and one of my favorite kales to grow. I've got a Thai basil here in the front, and then I have the craziest thing happening. So do you see this? These are tomato babies that have come from tomatoes I had last year. This is happening actually throughout this entire garden space. So I had Wild Boar Farms tomatoes growing up these trellises last year, and a lot of the birds and squirrels came and started eating them toward the end of the season. Well, I think they dropped them throughout the garden, and I now have tomatoes growing up throughout the garden space. So let me show you, here's another whole bunch of them. So I'm thinking I need to just pull them up and give them to my neighbors or something, right? Let me show you actually. I'm gonna pull some up and you can see what's happened. So it's basically like what happened is a little tomato dropped, and then all of these little tomatoes grew from that. Is that so crazy? So this is probably like 10, 15 tomato plants right here that I can share with my neighbor. And I know they're gonna be so healthy because they grew up naturally. If you've read my book, chapter 4, I talk about this very phenomenon that you should think about nature when you're working in the garden, because nature is incredible, literally. Okay. Moving on, we do have some kohlrabi. I've never grown kohlrabi before, but I'm experimenting with it, and I have it growing here in a row. And then I also have some beets on the edge. Again, beets are not the thing I'm always successful with, but I'm gonna try again and again this season. So I've got beets here on the edge. Then here on the trellis, they're very similar to my front trellises, except this year I'm gonna experiment with growing large tomatoes on the trellis. Last year I did only cherry and grape, but this year I'm doing large varieties back here in the back. So I think one of these is Brandywine and the other one is just a typical slicer tomato. So you can see the tomatoes starting to come up on the trellis. I have fava beans and sugar snaps. So if you can see these little flowers here, these are fava bean flowers. Now, the neat thing I like about having peas and beans next to my tomatoes is they are fixing nitrogen for my plants to help them grow nice and strong from the very start. So you don't want to feed tomatoes nitrogen once they start to grow up, but at the very beginning, it's great to give them nitrogen to get a good, strong base. So that's what's happening, at least I think what's happening by having peas and beans together with my tomatoes to start. In a few weeks, these peas and beans will go out of the garden, and this space will only be for my beautiful tomatoes. All right, finishing up here in the back, I have this crazy feverfew bush. So I planted this feverfew here last spring as a transplant, and I had no idea it was a perennial, and I had no clue it would be coming back so vigorously. So this plant last year was probably about half this size, and it started coming back from nothing in like March, and I was like, oh, that's cute. And then suddenly it's like like one of the biggest plants in my kitchen garden. So I'm gonna let this beautiful plant flower. I'll save the flowers. Feverfew is known as like a medicinal herb, so obviously feverfew, it's like a fever reducer. I've never used it as a fever reducer, but it is really pretty, and bees and butterflies love it too. So I'll let this finish flowering. I'll probably cut it, hang it to dry, and then this little girl is gonna have to move out of the kitchen garden because she is a little space intrusive, if you know what I mean. Finally, back here, I have more cabbages, and then I have an eggplant. Eggplant isn't like my ultimate favorite thing to grow in the kitchen garden, but I do like having a few because I love to have a purple in the garden so I can have like a rainbow. You know what I mean? So I've got eggplant here and on the other side as well. Now, just like in the front of the garden, this garden space is exactly symmetrical to this one. So everything I've talked about on this side is on this side as well. And I think that about wraps up all of the amazing craziness I have happening in these two back beds. Thanks so much for joining me on my kitchen garden tour this week. Stay tuned for many more garden walks through the kitchen garden all season long. And if you'd like to learn from me more about how to set up your own kitchen garden space and grow it so intensively the way I have in my own kitchen garden, you have to check out my new video, 5 things I've learned from gardening in 5 different zones and helping more than 200 of my clients set up their own kitchen gardens. You can find the link to that video right here somewhere on this page. So go watch it, find out more information about how to make your own kitchen garden dreams happen this season. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.